Greetings and salutations, and welcome back to the One Talent Challenge, Sorceress Edition, of course. I'm going to continue with the Sorceress, even though the Paladin is still very much alive, by the way. He's very much alive. I am going to finish him. You know what? No. We're going to do the Paladin. I'm going to finish the Paladin. I'm going to try to get him through Act 5. We're going to try to kill Bale and move into Nightmare. And today, like I said 2 days ago on the Pokemon Unite thing, by the time this video goes up, it's 2 days ago. For me, it was just yesterday because I recorded it. So, 2 days ago, we're going to, we were talking about how I was, at the very end of the Pokemon Unite thing, about how I was to create this space to talk about, for lack of a better term, how to make the younger generation become better gentlemen, you know? And I think what's lost in a lot of the generation today is proper courtship. Now, for those of you that don't know what proper courtship is, it is a very lost art from ages ago, where when you were interested and you wanted to court a lady, you would go and you'd spend some time as friends. You would spend quite a bit of time as friends, doing, going out and having a dance or going to a picnic or whatever. Very innocuous, fun things to get to know one another and have that connection and that bond. And building that up so that you really know each other very well. Ouch. Those stupid, whatever they're called. What are they called? Death Eaters? Not this. Death Slashers. Ow. And of course my mercenaries just bit the dust. Anyway, you would court these ladies and you would take them there. You would take them by the hand. You would be dressed up you'd be very dapper. And you would have an exquisite sense of style. Now, you don't have to go so far as to, the whole, you don't have to go so far as to do, the whole, mafioso, wear a, what's the thing, get a pocket watch and have a nice little pocket square and have a trench coat and a driver's hat. You don't have to go the whole 9 yards of the whole mafioso, aesthetic and be like, I cook it a pizza. No, you don't have to do that. You really, if you know the meme of the whole I cook it a pizza, you'll get it. But anyway, you don't have to go that far. You just have to look the part. You have to, I'm going to do a stealth breastplate. There we go. You just have to be able to look at least decent, dapper. You don't have to go completely exquisite on your look, but you do things like open the door for them, pull out their seat at a restaurant if it's a nice sit-down restaurant. Take in their appearance not for what they're wearing, but the overall look of them. Look into their eyes. And if they're trying to draw your attention elsewhere, focus your gaze back up into the eyes. See? And for the ladies out there that are watching this, let me tell you, I have told more ladies than I can count, draw the attention up. Wear glasses. Get them to look into your eyes so that that connection can be formed. Because there is a connection when you do that. When you look somebody in the eyes and you look long enough, is Frozen Times at the waypoint I need? I'm going to go back and check. But when you look into somebody's eyes long enough, you start forming a bond, a connection. And that is because it is. That is because when you really start looking into someone's eyes, it does kind of fire off the same neurochemicals that create oxytocin. So there is that bonding chemical that can potentially show up This is that type of like chemistry they talk about. Like, oh, they just have chemistry. Um, but look into their eyes. Talk to them about things that are not, modern topics. That was a fly that just flew down by my head. That's annoying. He's still here. Great. I want it to go away, so I'm gonna turn the fan back on. Haha. Anyway, talk to them about topics that are more intellectually stimulating, right? Talk to them about not really goals and ideas, but you could go so far as to say kind of like theories. I just got rid of that fly too. You could say things so far as like theories, um just general conversation where you can get along with somebody. um you obviously could talk about likes and dislikes and stuff like that, but never be afraid to ask the question, and never be afraid to ask questions, or to be asked questions, to correct myself there. On to the three things that I think are the most important thing. And a lot of people will, they're going to sit there and be like, well, how do you know? Or they're going to they're going to look at it and be like, are you a therapist? Or blah, 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 blah. No. I'm not. So you could take everything I've said here as an opinion as to what I believe needs to happen. And I think it would make a strong headway in patching up a whole lot of rocky situations that occur in society between men and women. I think that people need to start thinking about the three pillars of validation. Not just in a relationship sense, but in a friendship sense, in a cordial conversation stance, or a cordial conversation sense. And you're probably thinking, what are the three pillars of validation? Well, they are physical, emotional, and gotta go this way, and psychological. Those three pillars of validation. The emotional is basically saying to that person, you're needed and wanted. Essentially. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, where would you use that in normal social situations? This is how you use it in normal social situations. If you're talking like at a workplace, you are needed in the workplace because you bring something valuable to the workplace. You are wanted in the workplace because you are a joy to be around in the workplace. That sort of validation. That way, these people are being like, well, wait a minute. Okay, I'm feeling... they get to feel like people actually care. Which not only is good for their self-esteem, it's also good for the bottom line of a business, because the happier the employees, the better they work. The better they work, the more money you make as an employer. Okay? But you make them feel needed and wanted. That's the emotional validation. The psychological validation is saying you are heard and understood. Now, you've probably heard people say communication is key. And I would agree, communication is key to an extent. But it is not the only key. There is a bigger second key. If communication is the key, it's the key that opens the door, but not the vault, to use an analogy. The key to open the vault is comprehension. You can communicate all day long, but if the other person isn't comprehending, it goes nowhere. It goes nowhere, because it'd be like me coming over here and being like, okay, so what talking to this wall? Same thing, right? Because they don't comprehend. So you have to make sure that you're phrasing it in such a way that they understand it. You have to phrase it in such a way that they glean what you want them to glean from it, without making it sound like you're berating them for not knowing. So you kind of have to walk a gentle tightrope there, and you really have to be hyper specific. So super specificity, because that matters. Trust me, it does. But being heard and understood, right? You know, if you're in a business or you're in a workplace setting, and you say to your boss, "Hey, this isn't working because of this." You know, oh, that machine doesn't work because the item that keeps it lubricated, the oil pot that keeps it lubricated, is too close to the exhaust fan, and the exhaust fan's drying it out. Just using an example, not an actual real world example, just a for instance. And the boss goes, "Okay, well, we'll take it under advisement," and then just kind of walks away. And then things get worse. You're not being heard or understood. That validation's not there. Now, validations. The third validation is physical validation. Now, people are like, well, wait a minute. What's physical validation in the workplace? Camaraderie. Person-to-person camaraderie. A person that walks up and says, you know, "Hey, man, you don't have enough money for lunch today? Don't worry, I got you." Or, "Oh, hey, you know, my wife packed some extra lunch. Would you like some?" That sort of camaraderie is your physical validation. It lets you know, hey, they thought about me. You know, they really care. They're there for me if things go sideways. Even if it's an employee saying, "Hey, man, if you have an issue, come to me." Boom. Works in everyday society. Now, here's where the problems arise. If one of those three validation pillars is not met, you will have conflict. Because now you're feeling like you're not appreciated on one of the three pillars. But the other two kind of are like, okay, I could still stand working here. I can still stand being in this social situation because ... You're being heard and understood, and you're feeling needed and wanted. But you're not being physically validated. So you stick around until you get to know some people in the workplace or in the social structure that are there and saying, "Hey, man, I got your back." Right? Perfect example. Or not perfect example, but perfect. That's a perfect scenario that I've just laid out there. Once you lose two of those pillars, it all falls apart, and then the seeking behavior begins. You'll start seeking a new job. You'll start seeking new friends, new social structures, new social areas. And this happens all the time. This happens across everything. They have those three pillars of validation, and if people understood the three pillars of validation and truly believed them and followed them, a lot less fights would happen because they'd go, "Okay, wait a minute. And then they'd back up and say, you know, this pillar of validation isn't there. Should I escalate that into an argument? No. What I should do is I should back up and say, is there a way I can fix that validation pillar without becoming a detriment to the social dynamic, without becoming a detriment to my coworkers, without becoming a detriment to my partner?" Which, when you delve further into the whole relationship sense of things, the physical validation could mean just putting your arm around her or him, if you lean that way, or if you're a lady. You put your arm around them. It's like, ladies, don't feel bad about putting your arm around your man, right? 9 times out of 10, he'll think, what did I do to deserve this, right? And to have that physical validation lets them know that they're there, right? Now, the whole seeking behavior, this is where things get rocky in a relationship sense. So, what happens in a relationship sense with the pillars of validation? It depends on which pillar falls first before the second. Okay? Keep that in mind. Because if you are sitting there and you are like, "Oh, well, you know, I'm not being physically validated in the bedroom," coitus, if you will, that physical validation, you're like, "All right, whatever, you know, And it does cause arguments because the tension is there. You could cut the tension with a knife. Once the second pillar falls, once the second pillar of validation falls, the first one that went, which was the physical, goes into a physical seeking behavior, which will eventually lead to cheating, which is rife these days, by the way. And there's not just the physical cheating, there's the emotional cheating too, which is if you have an emotional validation pillar that falls first, generally they'll start seeking someone else who can become an emotional crutch for them. This one I have personal experience on. I was used as an emotional crutch for 9 months. Yeah. However, not all is lost. If people just understood it's much easier to leave a partner and move on, so long as you're not married, because then you start getting into messy divorce courts. It's easier to leave a partner and move on to someone that can fulfill those validations, but have the talk about it, right? If you're going to move on, and you're going to move on to another partner, sit down with the current person you're with and ask him what they are seeking out of this relationship. What is the end goal for them? If it's just dating for a while, then don't have it get serious. Just date casually for a while. Which means don't let it get to the point of coitus. Which is, guys, let me tell you right now, you're going to have to start saying no. Because what has happened is the rate of women that are out there in society just giving it out there and just being promiscuous is gotten out of hand. And people would say, well, wait a minute. Well, what would you say to a man that was the same way? That he's promiscuous and he's a man-ho. I wouldn't cut corners on it. I would call it what it is. And I'd be very upfront with them. It's damaging and detrimental to society on multiple levels. It devalues people. It says, oh, well, your only value is what you can offer up physically. Which is not true. Your values are much deeper than that. Everybody's values are. It doesn't matter who they are. Everybody has a worth, but you have to do the soul searching to find it. When you find your worth and you know your worth, aha! Now you can put that on display. And when you put that worth on display, that's when people start taking notice. Of course, they say, you've heard the thing like, that person's a high-value individual, a high-value male, or a high-value female. There's no actual intrinsic value there. It's not like they're sitting there walking around with a hefty pocketbook, which, that's another thing the society of today needs to get away from, is the whole, hey, let's get away from, it'll come to me in a second, give me a minute. Just 2 seconds. Materialism. It's nice to have one or two nice things, but if you're sitting there and you're making your entire life's work about materialism, not good. Pardon me. It's not good. And the reason why it's not good is there was a guru who went by the name Sadhguru. And Sadhguru had said, he gave a story. And he said that these people, that people are going to sit there and people are going to want things. And they will look at something and they will say, I want. And after they have it, they look at something else and say, I want. Even if they had everything in the world, they would look up at the stars and say, I want. So, I'm not telling everybody to give up their worldly possessions, but just be mindful about the possessions. Now, when we're talking... Hold on here. I need to go back to town real quick, and I need to look up rune word, and then I'll get back on track with the statements I was going to make. I'm going to get off the topic of society and the whole materialism, because that's kind of a backseat to what I wanted to talk about today. It's tangentially related. It's, you know, it's related out here on the fringe, right? But it's not the core of what I wanted to talk about. Back to the whole relationship thing. If you're having a problem with your partner, what you do is, let me look up that rune word real quick. It was, what's it, King's Grace rune word for shield. No, not King's Grace. Let me look up D2 rune words. It's for shields. Item group. Shields. Ancient's Pledge. Defense, damage goes to mana, cold, fire, lightning. Yeah, we're going to do that. Rel or Tal. We're going to do Ancient's Pledge. Anyhow, back to what I was saying. If you sit down and have a chat with your partner and say, look, I want to know what's the end game. What's the goal of the relationship? You have to be able to have that open conversation in order to better understand the other person. Otherwise, what are you doing is you're going to create an issue because each of your ideals are not connected and they're not meshing. Ideally, people should date for the sake of getting together, marrying, having children, having a life together. That should be the ideal. I know the economy has a toll on the number of kids that people generally have. But from what I've seen, there's almost like a concentrated effort to dissuade people from having children. Think about it. Think about the shows like Malcolm in the Middle and older shows like that. It depicted children as being little hellions, constantly running around causing issues and just being a complete menace, right? Well, that's not what they are. I mean, yeah, kids can get out of hand and kids can be a tough journey, but think about it this way. They are a source of joy hearing them say phrases that make you laugh. In fact, just the other day, I went over and I was talking to one of my friends. Actually, yesterday, come to think of it. I went over and I was talking to her. And I was asking her about, her husband, because her husband works in this one thing, and they were having a recent brouhaha in his workplace. And I was like, well, what's he gonna do? So I was talking to his wife, and we were just having a nice general chat, and their daughter, immediately, their daughter was the one that waved to me first, like saw me and waved and said, hi, wanted me to come over there and talk to, this, my friend's wife, and, just to sit there and have a general chat. And I was like, okay, yeah, fine, whatever. I'm not busy. I'm just walking. And so we're over there, and she started acting up. And I looked at her and I said, you do realize that I could just message your dad right here on my phone and tell him exactly how you're acting up? And I'm sure after his long shift of working, he's going to want to come home to that. And she just kind of went, and she stopped acting up. And I was just like, why do you do that? And without missing a beat, she looks right at me and she goes, "'Cause I'm a wild child," and then starts running off screaming into the yard. Her mom's standing right there shaking her head like... And I mean, I was laughing. I couldn't help it. I couldn't help myself. I was sitting there laughing. I'm like... But those moments right there, those little moments that catch you off guard and make you laugh, that's the point of parenting. That's the reason why. And everybody says, "Oh, well, we don't have the money to raise a child." Oh, believe me, everybody says that. But if everybody waited to have the money to raise a child, nobody would have children. But you take a look at the whole... You take a look at the war on parenting that's been happening over the past 10, 20 years. Look at all the programming. It depicts kids as little hellions. And it tries to convince parents not to be parents. It tries to convince them, oh, can't wait to send them off to school, so that you guys can have time alone. And it's like, yes, parents do need their time to decompress from the kids causing some stress. They also need time to decompress from work causing stress. And a lot of the decompression that can happen, or that should happen, should be done through meditation. I'll be honest with you. Meditation is one of the greatest skills anybody can learn. But society needs to realize that the end goal of courting a girl should be marriage, family, building a life together. That should be the end goal of courtship. Those goalposts have shifted. Ever since the Tinder digital age, those goalposts have shifted to, what's the end goal? Well, everybody knows what the end goal is. Kind of a pathetic end goal. You know what I mean? Kind of pathetic. Because anybody can go out and do that. But who can go and say, you know what I've done? I've started building a family with a goal in mind. To have grandkids. Have family reunions once they get up and get older. Have birthdays and family gatherings and sitting around a big Christmas tree. And, ringing in the Yuletide all together. That should be the goal. And that's not the goal anymore. And I think both people have lost their way. I think both men and women have lost their way. I think if we got back to a more simplistic way of dating, you go courtship. So you court, become friends, become solid sets of friends, and then really do some inner monologuing or dialoguing if you need to have a sounding board. And ask yourself, do I really like this person? Whoa, dizzy. That was a random dizzy spell. Oof. It was quick, too. I think it was my sinuses. Oh, yeah. That's sinus pressure. Didn't like that. Not at all. And anyway. Have that inner monologue. Okay? And what you'll find out is in that inner monologue if you really like that person. And if you do, pursue it further. You know what I mean? Like, go and decide to date them. It's a very... I'm going to say this, and it's kind of depicted a lot in anime trope, and as an anime trope, the whole confession that you like somebody, and then you're like, oh yes, I like you, blah, 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 and then it goes from there. We need to get back to doing that here in the States. Not so much the trope, invite them out behind someplace, but just a whole, you confess your feelings to them and see how they feel. We need to get back to doing that. That's what we need to get back to doing. Slow things down. You'll build a longer lasting relationship, and it'll be rooted in something. It doesn't have to necessarily be pure, okay? We don't have to go completely puritanical on this. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is we need to get back to acting like gentlemen. And we need to get the ladies back to acting like ladies. Now, I'm not saying that we have to force them to act like ladies. That's just not... It's incorrect. What it is we have to inspire them to act more feminine to that regard. I need to get back to a sense of normalcy, if I had to use a term. And when we do, you will see a drastic change in society, for the better. Society will start becoming a more high-trust society again, and you will start having less instances of crime, less instances of single mother parenthood, single father parenthood. You'll see less instances of crime, because when you don't have that social structure growing up of both parents, it does cause an issue where you need that, you need that social reinforcement from one side or the other, whether it be a disciplinary structure or whether it be a maternal viewpoint that helps you not necessarily be softer or not necessarily be more feminine, but to be more mindful, if nothing else, of how another person might perceive you or take your words properly. If I had to give it a generalization. I feel better now, though. My sinuses have kind of let go, and now I'm not... It was a really, it's like one of my sinuses cut loose, and, I had massive amounts of drainage all at once. Down into here. Because this is all... Oh, yeah, that's painful, too. Oof. So I had massive amounts of, sinus drainage, and it threw my equilibrium off real fast. It was just, perfectly fine, and then one side drains, and it's like, oh, awful. If you have that issue, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you don't have that issue, thank your lucky stars, because it's terrible. But no, we need to get back to slowing things down. We need to get back to realizing what the actual goalpost is. And not necessarily, I can't necessarily say, waiting for the ideal, because let's be realistic here. If you sit there and wait for the ideal, it'll probably never arrive, because the ideal and the real will never meet. So set a realistic goal for what you're looking for. And it's like, guys, you're not going to want to hear this, but you're going to have to start telling them no. You're going to have to start telling them no. And people say, well, wait a minute. Why would a guy want to say no? Think about it. If the guy's a pushover, A, she doesn't value you. B, she doesn't value herself because she thinks that she has to do that in order to have you see her favorably. So it devalues everybody. Now, on the neurochemical side of things, if you get into the nitty-gritty of, post-coitus, and I am keeping it as PC as humanly possible. If you're talking post-coitus, you're looking at the oxytocin release. Now, oxytocin is a bonding chemical. And when oxytocin is released, and it goes into the bloodstream, men don't produce as much oxytocin as women do. Women produce far more oxytocin. Men produce far less. This creates kind of an issue where Um, if there isn't an after, if there isn't a post-coitus bonding session, people start bonding with the act itself rather than the person. And when they start bonding with the act itself, they no longer view people as a valuable component to having a healthy social life and having a healthy life and goals, etc. They start seeing him as a means to an end, almost like an addict. You got to get that, you got to get that drug fix. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's what they start doing. And they start quantifying people differently, and it's not good, as it lowers their value, lowers your value, and it makes everybody feel like garbage. In that one moment, you might think, man, yeah, I'm getting there. But, afterward, you just kind of sit there like, what did I do? Yeah. And it's not a good thing. So, definitely start pumping the brakes and start saying, I'd rather wait. And if they look at you like they're crazy, if they look at you like you're crazy, tell them why. Give them the actual scientific definition as to why. You could go so far as to say you have bonded with the act itself and not the people. And as such, you are addicted to the act and are seeking the act rather than the person that's there. Now, they might hate you for that, and if they do, I apologize. But we have to get back to some serious basics here. Whoa. Just out of nowhere, the guy drops dead. Interesting.
Good afternoon.
He just, damage limit exceeded or something. It was terrible.
Yes?
It's going to be difficult. I've got to tell you that right now. It is going to be one of the most difficult things that collectively the men as a whole are going to have to face. It is going to be a very difficult uphill battle. But the alternative right now is you have statistics showing not good things for men that are single and miserable. And it's like you have to invest in yourselves. Build a skill set, build something, work toward a goal, do something, so on and so forth. You have to do it. And as soon as I get the waypoint here, I'm going to call it on this one. There it is. We didn't finish Act 5, but I'm coming up on 40 minutes, and I don't want to spend the other 20 minutes going hunting for Bale, so we'll save that for the next one. I hope everybody enjoys this video. I hope everybody takes the time to really absorb the message within it. And I hope they put it to good use. This is years of my knowledge, pretty much and wisdom, stuffed into a video while playing Diablo 2 hardcore. One talent challenge. It's weird. But I hope everybody enjoys this video, and again, everything I've voiced in here is my opinion, so take it for what it is, but do give it a listen with an open mind. I hope everybody has a fantastic evening, a wonderful tomorrow, and as always, have a good one.